Let's bring Paul into the conversation. Paul Hudrick inside the Sixers for the Monday edition. And it's a fun game tonight, fun conversation we're having here, Paul, on which of the guys. All right, if I was just to say you could watch this guy play all 82 games. You going Curry, you going Embiid?
That's a really tough one because they're both, especially this year, the way they're both playing, kind of at the peak of their powers right now. I mean, that's even scary to say for Steph with the years he's already put together, but he's arguably having one of the best years of his career. I would say Embiid only because we haven't seen it. You know, we haven't seen that full season of Joel Embiid playing a ton of games. We've seen Steph, in certain seasons, Steph play a ton of games, win a couple MVPs. So I guess from the standpoint of that we haven't seen it yet, I'll lean Embiid on that one.
Yeah, to Embiid, this particular year anyway, he's like watching 5 different guys rolled into one on any given night. I mean, I can't even think of a guy comparable to Embiid, like doing what he does in the league currently. Like, I get it. Curry's probably the best at what he does, but there are other guys who are similar. Like, I can say, oh, Dame Lillard is very fun to watch, and they're similar type of guys, and there's other guys out there. But nobody else does what Embiid does.
Right now, no. I mean, the closest kind of historical comp would be like Hakeem Olajuwon. And that's saying an awful lot because Hakeem Olajuwon was unbelievable in his prime with the way he could play both, two-way, so much skill. And I'm sure if big men shot the 3 ball in Hakeem's day, I'm sure he would have stepped out there and taken it more. But yeah, I mean, it's funny, Mike, because he referenced after the game, Joel Embiid, that over the summer, he watched a lot of Dirk Nowitzki and how he kind of operated around that nail area, which is kind of like around the top of the key, and how much harder that makes it to double team him. And to me, it struck me because I remember, we heard as early as his Kansas days that Joel Embiid would watch video of Hakeem Olajuwon, then go out there and just mimic his moves. So, like, the fact that he has that capacity mentally and just the ability to kind of memorize that and enact it. And like now he's doing it with Dirk Nowitzki. I mean, these are some of the greatest players to ever walk the earth. And he is just taking nuggets from all of their games and making it his own. And it's been so fun to watch. It's such a special season. And I really hope the Sixers fans like kind of appreciate how special it is.
Yeah, I mean, take us back to Friday night and what he did in that game. I mean, the game against the Nets, his last 4 games, he's just been bananas. It puts him up at 30 points per game and 11 rebounds. I mean, he's having, to me, the MVP season. I know people saying he's missing 18 games. I know this is going to be a conversation for these last, month and a half of the season here. But to me, they're the number one team. They have a 79% winning percentage when he's in the lineup. They're 500 without him. To me, the answer seems clear. It almost feels like the year that they gave Brogdon the Rookie of the Year just because he didn't play enough when it was clear Embiid was the most impactful rookie that season. And to me, he's the most impactful player right now.
It's fair, Mike. I mean, and listen, I don't want to take anything away from Nikola Jokic because he's also had an unbelievable season. He's playing really well. But kind of to your point, I mean, the Sixers are the number 1 team in the Eastern Conference, and they win almost 90% of their games when he plays. So I think that you can't overlook something like that. That's very significant. The Nuggets right now, I think, are like 5th and 6th, and, no Jamal Murray, so they're probably going to, I don't want to say definitely, but there's a chance they could sink even lower than that. And it is unfair, because especially it was actually Kevin McCormick who brought this up on the Coming In for Landing podcast. He said, is it really fair given this season, given how weird it is, and, the condensed schedule and the weird offseason, and is it really fair to just kind of reward Jokic the MVP simply because he's played more games, because his team didn't have a COVID outbreak, and because he's been 100% healthy? I mean, I get it's like an old school mentality. The best availability is the best ability is availability. But I don't subscribe to that personally. I'm kind of more with you, where Joel Embiid has been the best player in the NBA this year. He's been the most dominant player in the NBA this year. So to me, if I had a vote, which I do not, he would be the MVP thus far.
Yeah, I would agree with that. For me, tonight they're playing Golden State. Curry might not play. Oubre might not play. Seth Curry might not play. Harris might not play. Simmons might not play. But one guy who might play, let's talk about that, could be George Hill. What do we know there?
Yeah, not much. I mean, it seems like to me at this point, the thumb is not an issue anymore. It's just a matter of him having his legs underneath him. And when you're 34 years old and you haven't played since January, that's no small thing. I mean, they need to make sure that he can handle, whatever minutes it is. I mean, I can't imagine it's going to be much, but they got to make sure he can handle whatever 15, 20 minutes, because you don't want him going back out there and then having a soft tissue injury and then being stuck on the sidelines even longer. So it's better to make sure he is right. And what I imagine Mike will be, he'll warm up, he'll see where he is, and he'll probably let the team know, yeah, I should, I can't go tonight, or he can't. So to me, I think he is healthy. I don't think the thumb is an issue. I don't think anything else is lingering. I think it's just a matter of, is he physically fit enough that they feel comfortable putting him in an NBA game and letting him play rigorous minutes. So I think that's all it comes down to. Of course, I'm with every Sixers fan. I would love to see him play, but I think they're going to be cautious, and I think it's the right move considering everything.
Well, early when they first got him, what did Doc say? We want to see about 10 games. If he plays tonight, that means 11. They got 10 after, or they got 11 after this. So if he plays tonight, that would give him 12. So you would imagine he makes his debut this week.
I would think so. If he's questionable at this point, because to me, I always like questionable is like 50-50, I guess. So if there's a 50-50 chance he's going to play tonight, they have 3 more games this week, Phoenix and the 2 Milwaukee games. I imagine he has to get in on the action at some point in those 3 games. So if it's not tonight, I would be very surprised if he doesn't play any games the rest of this week. I think you'll see George Hill this week.
Yeah, he has not played in a game since January the 24th was the last time that he actually appeared in an NBA game. So he's got to have to get something going to get the legs under him, get his, cardio built up. So this week would give him, about 10 games to get in if he could end up going here. Do you think over the last 10 games of the season here, we might see anything different from Doc with the rotations? Start to get into playoff mode, or do you kind of keep, what you have and then enter the playoffs and shorten those things up?
It's a good question. I have a feeling he told us before that he had an idea of what his playoff rotation will look like right now. But at the same time, you got a guy like Korkmaz who's really coming on and really playing good basketball. Shake Milton's kind of been up and down. And then you have Matisse, who is obviously elite defensively, but isn't giving you much offensively. So you kind of have to balance all that. And I think there is still like a little bit of a competition between those guys. And then I don't want to forget Anthony Tolliver. He was pretty solid in his debut. Listen, he missed a couple shots. I think the first one was he didn't have his legs underneath him after making a really nice defensive play. Second one, he overcompensated for the short one and bricked it long. So I think the shot's going to come because that's always been there with him. But what I was impressed by, he looks good. He looks fresh. He moved his feet really well defensively, made a couple smart veteran-type plays that maybe, with all due respect to Mike Scott, maybe Mike Scott doesn't make them. He kind of could be a little over-aggressive sometimes. That one block that Tolliver had on Paul George, that's an outstanding defensive play. So I think he could still be a factor in this one way or another. So I do think there are some things that Doc Rivers still has to figure out. So I imagine his rotation is still probably going to go at least 10 deep for the next couple of weeks. To your point, maybe, the final week, maybe they figure some things out. But at the same time, the schedule softens up. So you might look to get some guys some breaks too. So it's kind of a catch-22 situation. But I think, with the Sixers, because they are pretty deep right now, because they're so talented, they should have no trouble with a first-round opponent. So you do have time to kind of figure that stuff out in the first round.
Well, 2 things on that. The first-round opponent would be interesting. Now, you got this wonky play-in thing, so you really can't see the standings yet. But Atlanta's won 8 of 10. Boston's won 6 straight, 8 of 10. New York has won 6 straight, 7 of 10. You got those teams in the middle starting to gain some confidence here.
Yeah, for sure. It's funny because I really thought the Heat would turn it up, and they did. They really have not. They beat Brooklyn yesterday, but Brooklyn pretty shorthanded. So that I don't know how much you can really glean from that game. But yeah, the Heat really haven't turned it up. To your point, the Celtics have, the Hawks have, the Knicks have. They're all playing really good basketball. So it's going to be really interesting to see kind of who sneaks in. The Hornets are very banged up now, But here's the thing I would say, Mike. The Sixers, the way they played this year, those 3 teams you named, the Knicks, the Celtics, the Hawks, we haven't really seen them play much against them. We get 2 of those coming up. but they've taken care of business against the Celtics, and they've taken care of business against the Knicks. So, yes, it's not ideal, I guess. You don't want to necessarily play those two teams, especially if they are rolling going in. But at the same time, there's no reason the Sixers can't beat any of those teams, or should be. I mean, really, they should be able to handle any of those teams in a 7-game series. We've seen what Joel Embiid has done against those teams. So at full strength in playoff mode, I can't imagine any of those teams really giving the Sixers much problems.
Give me your thoughts on how they will use Korkmaz come playoff time, because without Tobias the other night, he closed the game out.
Right. I think it's still up in the air because Doc kind of has an interesting, like those three guys, the trio of Korkmaz, Shake Milton, and Matisse Thybulle are an interesting trio because they kind of all bring three very different things, right? Korkmaz just shoots the heck out of the ball, and he's got ultra confidence and lets it rip, which this team needs. They need a guy who just will fire it. On top of people to make them, they need someone who just will aggressively fire, and Korkmaz does that better than anyone on this team. With Shake, it's another ball handler, it's another creator, and defensively, he does, is better than Korkmaz, I would say. It's 6'6", a little stronger this year, so he's been better on that end. And you got Matisse Thybulle, who is this elite defensive disruptive player. So I'm very curious to kind of see what will Doc do. I mean, is it going to be a situation where those guys are going to play based on need, based on matchup, or is he going to roll two of those guys and another guy's going to be waiting in the wings? Like I think with the way Korkmaz has played recently, he has to be considered a candidate for a rotational spot. I'm not saying that he should get it or that he definitely will get it, but I think given the way he's played, he has to be under consideration.
Yeah, and then I guess another guy who's been getting a lot of minutes, I'm imagining that's more out of necessity right now, but does Mike Scott see playoff minutes?
I would say no at the moment, especially, again, we don't really know what Anthony Tolliver, he's still got his 10-day, he's still got a few more days on that. I would imagine, I don't know this, I have no inside knowledge of it, but it would surprise me if they didn't sign him to at least another second 10-day to get, a deeper look at him. And look, you're kidding yourself if you don't think that that's direct Mike Scott competition, because it is. So I think Tolliver's, like I said earlier, I think he's going to have something to say about all this. And so I would say regardless, I don't think Mike Scott is in the playoff rotation right now because you have way too many guys that are playing better than him and that can bring more to the table. And when you get to the playoffs, you can roll with those lineups where Tobias is kind of at the 4 with a couple bench guys. So you really don't need Mike Scott. So I would say as of now, he's out. And there's still a chance that Tolliver can even move ahead of him on the depth chart.
Yeah, I know that a lot of people are starting to say, get Scott out of there. He's playing out of position, number one. I mean, sadly, he's got to play a lot of center minutes there. But I feel like that first year they got him, he had a lot of big shots and had some moments, but he really hasn't been able to regain and find that shot. So I would imagine if Tolliver can come in and give you 8 to 10 minutes and hit a shot here or there, he probably would get the upper hand.
Yeah, and I would say, and I like Mike Scott. I've defended him a bit here in the past, but like the flat out honest take here is that he just hasn't been good. And it's not just the shot. I feel like defensively he's had his moments. To your point, when he's playing out of position at the 5, I think he's actually stood up pretty decently. He's held out okay. But I think a guy like Tolliver, he flashed it. I mean, Tolliver doesn't even know everything yet. Like, he doesn't even know exactly the defensive scheme or exactly the offensive scheme. He doesn't even know the players he's playing with. And already in that game against the Clippers, he made so many good little, like, showing on pick and rolls, switching on guards and holding up. Little things like that I don't think Mike Scott necessarily does as well. Mike Scott is more than happy to be physical, and that's important too. I mean, you need guys who are willing to throw their body around, give you a good, hard, clean playoff foul. But I think in the modern NBA, I think could see the argument that Tolliver could be more valuable.
All right, the takeaways from the Sixers' victory over the Clippers. If you missed that from Friday night, they're up right now at 97.3 ESPN. Ben Simmons might be out tonight with an illness. You might get no Tobias. You might get no Seth Curry. You might get no Dwight Howard either. So
easier to say who's available at this point.
Exactly. So we'll keep an eye on when Doc speaks, and we'll have that at Paul Hudrick on Twitter. Give him a follow for tonight's game, and the Sixers take on the Warriors right here on 97.3 ESPN. And he, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk on the hotline. All right, Paul, we'll see you.
Sounds good, Mike. Take care, man.
There he goes, Paul Hudrick, our Sixers insider. And, of course, he, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline.